do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Tickets. Head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__ Jonathan Smith, and maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app. No matter how you're tuning in, I greatly appreciate it. Going to be joined here in an hour by the one and only Zach Pereles, the guy who watches a ton of college hoops. And we're going to talk about the NBA draft, because the NBA draft happens tonight. And the NBA draft kind of upsets me a little bit because it should be a one-day event. Like we can select 60 players in one day. Not that difficult. But no. The NBA is like, hey, how about we make the draft a 2-day event? I don't know why. I think it's dumb. I think it's pointless. But hey, no one really cares what I think, which is fine. So the Indiana Pacers have one selection in this year's NBA draft. They'll be making that pick tomorrow. They have the 54th pick in the draft. And I've got 3 ideas, 3 potential players that we could see the Pacers take with the 54th pick. I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. I've got takes on every top prospect in this year's NBA draft. Let me think. What else we got going on today? There's some Colts hype out there that really upset me. Aaron Rodgers is in his final season, but I want to start today with the Indiana Fever last night, who beat a good Seattle Storm team 94-86 last night on the road. If you go to, Bet365 or DraftKings or FanDuel, chances are, if you were to look at the odds to win the WNBA Finals this year. By the way, I saw someone call the NBA the MNBA the other day, and I was like, please don't ever do that again. That really bothered me. Anyway, Fever win last night, 94-86 against a really good Seattle Storm team. The Storm currently have the 4th best odds to win the WNBA Finals, and the Fever have the 3rd best odds, and it lived up to that hype. A very good game. Fever win 94-86. This team can really score. If you want to be, glass half full about the Indiana Fever, 94 points in 40 minutes is a lot. They shot 51% from the field last night, and that's because Leah Boston was like, hey, give me the basketball, and I'm just going to go get buckets. 31 points on 13 of 18 shooting. Also pulled down 8 rebounds for the former number 1 overall pick. People forget how good she is. I think people get very caught up in the, Caitlin Clark stuff. Obviously, I think people get very caught up in the Kelsey Mitchell stuff because she's very dynamic when she has the basketball in her hands. But what's really nice to have? Someone you can just give the ball to on the block and they can just go score. And that's what Aaliyah Boston was for the Indiana Fever last night. Once again, 31 points on 13 of 18 shooting is kind of insane. Also pulled down 8 rebounds, 4 of those offensive, 4 of those defensive. Really good night from her. Kelsey Mitchell, she got in on the action a little bit as well. 26 points on 8 of 14 shooting. She hit 5 of her 7 3-point attempts. That's really impressive. That's pretty big time right there, especially on a night where the Fever didn't shoot the ball great from 3. After talking to Tony East yesterday, that the Fever, they want to play fast and they want to get threes up. They took 24 last night, only made 8 of them. Kelsey Mitchell had 5 of those makes. Lexi Hull had the other 2. Caitlin Clark had a bad night. 6 points on 3 of 13 shooting. 9 assists. That is a good number. But she had 8 turnovers. And I have 2 takeaways from this. One, she didn't play very well. 0 of 6 from 3, that's awful. That's terrible. I like the fact that she had 9 assists. I like that Caitlin Clark is an extremely willing passer. I like that she is an aggressive passer. Like there are some point guards who never turn the basketball over because they don't take risks. And every pass that they make is a relatively easy one. And there's some value in that, but you're also probably leaving some points on the table. Like, I don't mind it if my point guard has, a couple turnovers. I view point guard very similar to how I view interceptions thrown in the NFL. It's like if you throw 4 interceptions all year and you play all 17 weeks, like that's not a good thing. That means you're not being aggressive enough in the way that you throw the football. You're taking just all of the easy throws, which is fine. But when you do that and you never raise your level of risk, you are leaving points on the table. And I think point guard is the exact same thing. Like your point guard should probably have 2 or 3 turnovers a night because they're trying to make these tough passes that lead to baskets. And Caitlin Clark, a little too aggressive in the way that she threw the basketball around last night. 8 turnovers is just bad. Okay, and that is something that we saw a lot of last year, and that has to stop at some point. Because at some point, if you can't not turn the ball over, eventually you're just no longer a point guard. You're a shooting guard who can't make good decisions. So she has to clean that up. But no way the Fever win that game last year. They just didn't have enough. This year, they do. Caitlin Clark, 6 points, 8 turnovers. They weren't overcoming that last year, but this year, against a good Seattle Storm team, once again, the Seattle Storm had the 4th highest odds to win the WNBA Finals. This is a good basketball team that the Indiana Fever beat without Caitlin Clark having to be awesome or average, because she was bad last night. And that is a good sign for this Fever team going forward, getting big-time contributions from Aaliyah Boston, getting big-time contributions from Kelsey Mitchell. Like, they were awesome last night, right? Dantas off the bench, she had 10 points on 4 of 7 shooting from the field. This Fever team, better than it was last year. Good enough to win the whole thing? Probably not. But they're still a much better basketball team than they were last year. I don't mind it as long as they're taking steps in the proper direction. And I feel like the Fever are. They're 7-7. They've had a lot of issues. Stephanie White missed some games. DeWanna Bonner, she's not playing right now. There's a chance that she doesn't return to the team at all. That's problematic. Caitlin Clark missed some games with her ankle injury. It's just not good. There's a lot of extra things going on behind the scenes of the Indiana Fever, and that is not a good thing. That is simply a very bad thing that you can't allow to happen. Okay, so the Fever, very good win last night. Hopefully they can keep it rolling here in the near future. Their next game should be coming up here relatively soon. Yep, they're going to play tomorrow night at home against the Los Angeles Sparks, right? The number 2 overall pick. I can see her face. The tall blonde girl, she was picked second after Caitlin Clark, 2 years ago. So that'll be fun. Kelsey Plum, you can go stand outside her hotel and ask her for her autograph. She'll probably think that you're kind of weird for doing that, though. That's a reference to a video. I don't know if you saw it, but yeah. Anyway, so the Fever, solid team, still not a great team, though. Now, the Pacers have a great team. I legitimately believe that, but they have some holes. Or not holes. That's a bit dramatic. But they've got some areas that they could be a little bit better at. And they're going to have the 54th pick of the NBA draft tomorrow night, because the draft's 2 days now for some reason, which is dumb. And I've got 3 prospects, 3 different positions that I think we could see the Pacers potentially take. And I'm going to start with my favorite one, Mohamed Faye. He's a center from Senegal. He's currently a 20-year-old pro in Italy. And to be fair, I don't have a ton of tape from the professional league over in Italy. But that being said, I read a lot about him last night. And here are the things that he's good at. Here are his strengths. Okay, he's big. He's like 6'11", with a 7'4" wingspan. He's agile, pretty mobile for his size. Obviously, like, he's not moving like a guard. If he was doing that, he wouldn't be up to potentially be the 54th overall pick. And because he's so big and he moves well for his size, he's a good defender, right? Kind of switchable. He can protect the rim a little bit. Very athletic guy. Obviously, very large as well. Plays hard. Sounds like a Pacer already. Okay, he plays the game with relentless effort. And that is, can you get any more pacer than that? He doesn't need the ball to impact the game. That's a big deal because if you're being taken 54th overall, then chances are you're not going to have the ball very often. Okay, he's a good rebounder. That's really where I read that on every scouting report that I read about this guy. I was like, oh, he's a good rebounder. Let's bring him in. Because if you've been listening to the show for the last 2 weeks, then you know that I think that the Pacers need a good backup rebounding center, a guy who can just come in and clean up the glass, because the Pacers had moments throughout the postseason and during the regular season where they would lose games because they just didn't rebound well enough. Let me take you back to the third quarter, Game 7 of the NBA Finals, where they gave up 7 offensive rebounds in that quarter alone. It's like, man, if the Pacers had a rebounding center who could just come in and finish possessions on the glass, like that would have been so valuable at various points throughout the playoffs. And Mohamed Faye is a guy who can give you that. Okay, he's also a lob threat, like I said, decently athletic, right? So this is a guy who's gonna, set screens, run to the rim, finish inside. Defensively, he's gonna rebound and block shots. That's like at 6'11" with a 7'4" wingspan. Sounds like a good fit for the Indiana Pacers. Here are his weaknesses. He can't really shoot, which is fine. You don't have to be able to shoot to play backup center in the NBA. In fact, he hasn't attempted a three-pointer all year, which I'm a fan of. It's like, hey, you can't shoot. You know who you are as a basketball player. That is one of the most important things for every athlete in every sport. Like, you have to know who you are, what you're good at, and what you're not good at. And the fact that this guy knows that he's not a good shooter, once again, hasn't attempted a three all year in the pro league that he's playing in over in Italy. Like, I'm glad that he knows who he is. That to me is a good thing. Being self-aware is important. Okay, so he's got to work on that. Doesn't have great touch outside of the lane, so he's got to work on that a little bit. Offensive versatility, there's not a lot there. Okay, like he sounds like a very raw prospect. He doesn't have like any go-to scoring moves besides going up and dunking on people and finishing around the bucket, which to me, that's fine. Like he's going to be the 54th overall pick. Like, he doesn't need to have the Hakeem Olajuwon drop step or the spin or the shimmy. He doesn't need the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar skyhook. Can he rebound and run to the rim and finish at the rim? Okay, which is important, and it makes his next weakness a little concerning. The left hand isn't very good. The left hand's not very good, and so he's got to work on that. There's some players in the NBA who can find success only going to their strong hand. Tyrese Halliburton's done it. Julius Randle, I think, is the biggest example of it, but he's even pretty limited sometimes. So Mohamed Faye, whoever takes him, hopefully it's the Pacers. He's got to work on scoring with his left hand. He's also going to be a little bit more efficient finishing around the bucket. Once again, that's a touch thing. I like this dude. He sounds exactly like what I've been saying that the Pacers need for the last week and a half or so. He sounds like a backup center that gives you a different look than Miles Turner while not sacrificing much rim protection. Because that's what the Pacers need, right? Like, because you need lineups in the NBA now where you can play 5 out. And Miles Turner allows you to do that while still having a bigger guy who can protect the rim if need be. But you also need lineups that allow you to rebound well, because sometimes you're going to play the Knicks and they're going to have Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns on the floor. And you can't give up a million offensive rebounds like the Pacers did in those minutes when you're playing against a lineup like that. Or you're going to play against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are going to have Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren out there. And when you see those lineups, you have to have guys in there who can rebound. Pascal Siakam, by the averages, was 7th in rebounding amongst power forwards in the NBA this year. Like that is a power forward who rebounds the ball well. They need a center who can do it as well. I like Miles Turner. If you've listened to the show, then you know that. But they need a backup center who can come in and really control the boards. And Mohamed Faye seems like a guy who may be able to do that. Look, he's the 54th pick. He's 20 years old. He's a pretty raw prospect. And if you trust your staff, which I think the Pacers do, I know I do, it's Coach Carlisle. Like, that guy's been around for forever. If you trust your staff to develop the players that you draft later, bring this guy in, and let's see what he looks like in 2 years. Seriously. And look, he could probably play over Thomas Bryant and, Tony Bradley right now. Definitely Tony Bradley. So Mohamed Faye, I think, would be a really good option for the Pacers tomorrow night when they use that 54th pick. Who knows? Maybe they surprise us and they trade up into the first round this year. I don't know. We'll see. But I've got two other potential prospects that the Pacers could take tomorrow night with that 54th overall pick. I'll tell you who they are when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. You can also listen via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Shout out to the X viewers. That's usually where we have our most viewers. So thank you for watching on the Everything app, X. Now, running through potential draft selections for the Indiana Pacers tomorrow night. Just went over this guy named Mohamed Faye, big center from Senegal, 20 years old, currently a pro in Italy. Pretty raw, but very athletic, could potentially be a decent rotation center at some point during his career. Another guy, a guy that I think you're going to be familiar with, Caleb Love, the 6'4" guard out of Arizona. Been a really good college player for the last 4 years. Kind of feels like a Pacer, feels like a guy that this front office would take in the second round. A guy with a lot of college experience, has had the ball in his hands, all those things. And he can guard. Doesn't seem like he's too big of a problem. He's got some good strengths. I think he's got things that a lot of NBA teams are going to like about him, other than, his age. He's a 3-level scorer, right? Like, he can score the basketball. All right. He can be a bit of a heat check guy some nights, but this dude can just make shots. All right. He's got the ability to shoot from the mid range. He finishes at the rim really well. He can shoot the three. Kayla, like, this guy, he can score the basketball. He's a good spot up shooter, right? Very effective, coming off screens and shooting the ball. He shoots the ball very well. And you can never have enough shooting at this time in the NBA. He's very athletic, very quick, fast guy, right? So very good out in transition. We know this Pacers team likes to get out and run. So, uses the athleticism to finish and do all those things. And he's a good defender, right? He's shown, throughout his time at Arizona and before that, North Carolina, he's shown the ability to be a good, solid one-on-one defender, right? And look, when you're athletic and you're 6'4" and you're long, like, you should be able to guard at least a little bit. And Caleb Love showed that during his time at Arizona. Now, he's got some weaknesses. Okay, all these guys are going to have weaknesses. If they didn't, then they wouldn't be going 54th overall. Okay, now, despite the experience Caleb Love has in college, he struggled with some situational awareness during times, which impacts your reliability. But my thing is, look, if you're the 54th overall pick in the draft, then you're probably not going to be closing minutes. You're not going to be playing in the closing minutes of, like, high-intensity playoff games. Probably not. So that doesn't worry me too much. He's not a great shooter off the bounce. Okay, like, he takes a lot of pull-up jumpers, but the efficiency in those shots just isn't great. The shot selection can be not good, i.e., those pull-up jumpers. So not a big fan of that. Going left, he's not very good either. Kind of loses control of the basketball, forces some tough shots when he goes left. So that's got to be something that he has to work on. But, like, that's something that you can work on and get better at. So Caleb Love, not a bad option, not a great option either. The Pacers need another guard this year with the Halliburton injury. But, like, what's his role going to be when Halliburton comes back? I don't know. I don't think that I would rather use the 54th pick on a raw prospect like Mohamed Faye or another big center who you can maybe develop into a rotational guy, as opposed to using the 54th pick on a guard who may or may not be good enough to play in the NBA to then kind of, fill that Tyrese Halliburton vacancy for a year. Not saying that Caleb Love would start, but, like, he would potentially get minutes. I don't know. I don't really like the idea of the Pacers taking a guard 54th overall. With that being said, if Kevin Pritchard wants to take a guard, I'm not going to question anything that he does. Jalen Moore is a guy that I like. Big wing out of Oklahoma, played all 4 years at Oklahoma. Good size, good length. He's 6'7", the 7'2" wingspan, very athletic, right? Very explosive. Because there's some guys who are athletic, like laterally on the ground, quickness and speed. And then there's guys like Obi Toppin who are just like vertical, explosive athletes, guys who just kind of jump out of the building. Jalen Moore fits the latter. Okay. Defensively, the dude can guard. He can guard, which, I'm always in favor of drafting players who can play defense because, let's just be honest, you want to draft guys that are capable of playing in the playoffs. And the guys that are capable of playing in the playoffs are guys who can shoot and play defense. Because if you can shoot at a minimum offensively, you can help provide spacing. And like if you're a defensive liability, then you can't play because teams are just going to pick on you time and time again. So the idea of drafting a guy later who can guard, I like, because players tend to improve their jump shot throughout their time in the NBA. Usually, not always, but that is something that tends to happen. Okay, another guy who plays with a high motor, sounds like a pacer already. Very aggressive, very intense, makes a lot of these like hustle plays, first to the floor kind of guy. So I like that. All right, and then he's just smart. He seems like he knows how to play basketball. He seems like he understands spacing and movement. Like he cuts well, and because he's a pretty good vertical athlete, he finishes well at the rim. I want guys like that around Tyrese Halliburton. I want guys who know how to cut. Because if you know how to cut, and if you're capable of finishing around the rim, then Tyrese Halliburton is going to find you. He is, right? And whoever the Pacers end up taking with the 54th pick, they're going to be around when Tyrese Halliburton comes back. And I want guys who know how to move without the basketball. That to me is so, so important. If the Pacers take you, like, you're probably not going to have the ball a ton. So you better know how to cut, and you better be able to shoot. And Jalen Moore is a decent catch and shoot guy. All right. Now on the ball, not great. Okay. Like he's not going to create shots. He's not going to hit step backs. He's not going to create for his teammates, but that's fine. He's going to be the 54th overall pick in the draft. Chances are teams aren't going to give him the basketball and say, hey man, go create. They're going to ask him to play defense, guard, cut, and shoot the ball well. If he can do that, then Jalen Moore's going to be able to play anywhere, not just Indiana. Okay. Speaking of the shooting, got to speed up the release a little bit. The passing and playmaking isn't great. Once again, not great with the ball in his hands. But hey, man, if he can defend and knock down open shots, then do your thing. Okay. He needs to put on a little bit of weight. He is a little skinny. So on the interior, not great, but if you can keep guys in front of you, then you should be fine. I like him. It's hard to not like guys that are tall, long, can shoot and play defense. He's played college basketball for 4 years, right? Like he knows how to play basketball, and that is such an important thing. He was never really a primary ball handler at Oklahoma, so he really knows how to play off the basketball. I like Jalen Moore. If the Pacers took him at number 54 overall tomorrow, I would be totally in favor of it. Okay, the NBA draft is happening tonight and tomorrow night because for some reason this has to be a 2-day event. By the way, coming up after the Zach Pereles interview, who's going to join the show here in about 30 minutes, we're going to be giving away tickets to Holiday World. Today's show is brought to you by Holiday World and Splash and Safari. They got all the things going on over there right now. You don't want to miss it. Once again, we're going to give away tickets coming up here at about 11:20-ish, somewhere around there. Because Holiday World has great things going on, and you don't want to miss it. Now through August 3rd, you can catch Holidays in the Sky drone show and fireworks spectacular. Celebrate this 4th of July at Holiday World and Splash and Safari. Enjoy thrilling rides all day long, then stick around as the sky lights up with Holiday World's in the Sky drone show and firework display. Once again, we're going to give tickets away to that coming up at around 11:20 after the Zach Pereles interview. Now, those are the three guys for the Indiana Pacers that I wouldn't mind seeing them draft. Mohamed Faye, kind of this raw center who gives you another look, with a little bit of development. He could probably be a guy who, is a rotational center. Caleb Love, got to work on some decision-making stuff. Got to work on that pull-up jumper, but He's a guard who can maybe come in off the bench and get you some buckets, and you don't have to sacrifice too much on the defensive end of the floor there. Jalen Moore, just a big wing who can shoot and play defense. Love that. Okay, so those are three, I think, solid options. I would be surprised if we saw the Pacers trade up at all, like to be in the first round. I would love it if they did, because this is a pretty good draft class. We'll see. We'll see. I've got a lot of takes on this draft class. We're going to get into them here in about 8 minutes or so. But before we do that, I had that interview yesterday with Tony East, and he came on, and we were talking about the draft a little bit, and he mentioned Tony East basketball players, like just guys that he likes. And I was like, what's a Jonathan Smith basketball player? Like, what are the things that make me light up? And I'm like, oh, I want that dude. And I think the biggest thing is big athletes who can handle the basketball, because size is something that you obviously can't really teach. If you listen to Rick Carlisle over the past couple of years talk about the Pacers and their defense, he emphasizes the importance of having positional size. And I think a large part of why the Pacers defense has gotten better these last few years is they've had a real power forward. Like they haven't had to play Aaron Nesmith at the 4. Like they've got Pascal Siakam, a legitimate 6'8", tall, long, lanky dude who can play defense. And as they've gotten bigger at every position, Halliburton, 6'5", 6'6", whatever, defending other point guards. I say this time and time again, when you're big and you're long and you're smart and you know where to be, you're going to have an impact on defense. Andrew Nembhard, he's not small. The dude's like 6'3", 6'4", long arms, right? Aaron Nesmith playing the 3 at like 6'5", 6'6", very long arms. And then obviously Siakam, and then whoever's playing center. Like, as the Pacers have gotten bigger, i.e. the Pascal Siakam trade, their defense has improved. So I want big athletes for that reason. The ability to handle the ball, really important to me, because ball handling in the NBA doesn't seem to develop like the other skills. Over time, these players that get drafted, like they put on a little bit extra weight, they get stronger, right? That develops. Guys who show up and can't shoot, that's a skill that normally develops over time, because you have good coaches in the NBA who, know how to help guys put on muscle, and they know how to teach people how to shoot the basketball, right? So the skills like that tend to develop a little bit once guys get drafted. What doesn't develop? Ball handling. Ball handling usually doesn't develop like the other skills. It can. There are guys who have improved their ball handling, i.e., Giannis has improved as a ball handler. But a lot of guys, it doesn't really happen. So I want guys who can handle the basketball, because to me, it's a really important thing, especially if you're going to play for this Pacers team, because you're going to have the ball in your hands at least a little bit with how this team moves the basketball around. The other thing, I don't like small guys. I do not want small players, because small players don't last, and they are taken advantage of in the NBA playoffs. Look at Darius Garland. That guy hurt his toe, and when he's on the floor, teams go right at him. Trae Young, his teams aren't very good. I don't think that's really a surprise. Small guard who can't defend, teams pick on him all the time. So big dudes who can handle the basketball, guys who know how to play as well, like just know how to cut and move and screen and rescreen and do all those things. I like those kind of guys as well. And you're about to see why. So I've been toying with this segment idea, calling it 10 takes. And I've got 10 takes on the NBA draft tonight on some of the top prospects in the league. We're going to run through all of them. I'm going to give you my thoughts when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
When Ram won its first Motor Trend Truck of the Year, it was celebrated. But after 7 times, what's left to say? The trophy speaks for itself. And now, so does the deal with Employee Pricing Plus. Stop by your local dealer today and take home a Ram truck. Ram, 7-time Motor Trend Truck of the Year. Nothing stops Ram. Offer valid on select 2024 and 2025 Rams for non-FCA employees and retirees. $200 admin fee applies. Not all buyers will qualify. Restrictions apply. Does not apply to leases. See dealer for details. And 6/30/25. Ram is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show. Here in 20 minutes, Zach Pereles is going to join the show. After that interview, I'm going to give away tickets to Holiday World and Splash and Safari because it's a great place for you to spend some time this summer. They've got an awesome drone show and fireworks show going on July 4th. Head down there, celebrate. It's going to be a blast. Now, the NBA draft happens tonight, and the NBA draft is great for multiple reasons. Kids, reaching their dreams. Guys, doing the whole I was taken 37th. I'm going to memorize the first 36 guys in front of me, and that's going to be my motivation. And people love stuff like that. And it's cool, I guess. My favorite thing about it is all the crazy draft comps that we get. Like this player reminds me of, prime Michael Jordan. This player reminds me of like 2007 LeBron James. You hear crazy things like that. And it's like, they must be talking about like Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey. And it's like, no, they're talking about some dude out of Lithuania who's going to be drafted 47th overall. The comps that happen on these live draft shows are nothing short of insane. Here's Kendrick Perkins this morning giving a draft comparison for Cooper Flagg. Listen to this.
But look, this is how I look at Cooper Flagg. If LeBron James and Kevin Garnett had a baby, you get Cooper Flagg. And why I say that is because when you think about it,
what a comp right there. If Kevin Garnett and LeBron James had a baby, you would get Cooper Flagg. What in the world? That's just, I love stuff like that because it's just insane. The absolute best version of Cooper Flagg, probably doesn't come close to some combination of Kevin Garnett and LeBron James. Like if you're some sort of combination of Kevin Garnett, and LeBron James, then you're probably going to be like the best player ever when it's all said and done. So lofty expectations for the one and only Cooper Flagg, which now leads me into what I want to do for the rest of this hour. I've got 10 players listed here on my note sheet. And I've got 10 takes or a take for each and every one of them. So 10 players, 10 takes. Let's start with Ace Bailey, a guy who's going to be a top 10 pick tonight, probably going to be a top 5 pick per the odds in Vegas. And every time a tall player comes around, like if you're 6'8" or taller and you make tough shots and you can shoot and you're skinny and you're lanky, then you are immediately deemed the next Kevin Durant. Oh, hey, you see that 6'9" guy who can like kind of dribble and kind of shoot? Yeah, that's the next Kevin Durant. No, not true. Ace Bailey, I don't really get it. I don't like this whole pre-draft stuff, not going to workouts, trying to control your situation. I think you should show up to every workout. You should try to be drafted as high as possible. And whoever drafts you, you should go in and you should work your butt off. That's what should happen. But that's not what Ace Bailey's doing. And what I think people don't realize about Ace Bailey is he's closer to Jabari Smith than he is Kevin Durant or any other tall, long guy who's had a great career. Okay. Also, Ace Bailey, I don't think that the defensive upside is the same as Jabari Smith Jr. He's shorter than those guys. He's like 6'8" without shoes, right? Like he's not as tall as everyone thought that he was. He's not even 6'8". He's 6'7", 202, long arms. I get it, but I don't. I wouldn't touch that guy with a 10-foot pole. Wouldn't take him. Wouldn't want him on my team. I think the idea of I want to go somewhere where I can take a lot of shots immediately, I don't think that that's a team guy. I think that's a guy about himself. And I wouldn't want a guy like that on my basketball team. Cooper Flagg, he's the best player in this draft. He's going to be the best player in this draft. You just heard it from Kendrick Perkins. If LeBron James and Kevin Garnett had a baby, it would be Cooper Flagg. I still can't believe he said that. Yes, I can. It's Kendrick Perkins. Anyway, he's going to be the best player in this draft. I think, defensively, he's awesome. Like he is a large human being. He's taller than Ace Bailey. He weighs more than Ace Bailey. His wingspan is the exact same. He's like 6'9" with shoes on. He's going to block shots. He's going to get in a stance and stay in front of guys. He's going to make shots. Like his ability to score the basketball was, I think, greatly what's the word? It wasn't well advertised. He shows up and I was like, I don't know if he's going to be able to score. And then like all he did was score 19 points on a 59% true shooting percentage. That is incredibly impressive. He rebounded the ball. He dished the ball out to other teammates. He protected the rim. Just a really dominant player in every facet of the game. And I think that's what he's going to be at the NBA level at some point. The issue is he's going to be drafted by the Dallas Mavericks, where, Anthony Davis is going to play a lot of power forward and PJ Washington is going to get a lot of minutes. Like Cooper Flagg is obviously going to play because he's the best player in the draft. I just don't think he'll win Rookie of the Year because he's going to a good team. And players like Anthony Davis are going to get the majority of the shots. Unless the Mavericks trade Anthony Davis, which is what they should do, but they won't do that. Con Knippel is the third best player in the NBA draft this year. And I firmly believe that. I love this dude so much. He's going to play in the NBA for a long time. Dylan Harper Jr. and Cooper Flagg are both better than him. But Con Knippel's going to win Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to be a top 5 pick. I don't think that the 76ers take him. I think that we see the 76ers take VJ Edgecombe, who I'm going to talk about here in a second. He's either going to go to Charlotte, which I really hope not. And if he doesn't go to Charlotte, then he will go to Utah. And they're going to give him the basketball. He's a big guard, 6'5" with no shoes, right? So he's really probably playing at like 6'7", 220. He can handle the basketball. He can play off the ball. That's really my favorite thing about him. Like he is my favorite player in this draft. I think he probably is. Because he's big. He can really guard. You see him. He looks like this chubby white kid. He's not. And it's like, this dude can't guard. Yes, he can. He can also dribble, pass, and shoot. And he can play off the ball. And he's a good cutter. And he finishes well around the rim. And he's got such good feel. Like he is an excellent, excellent passer. And by the way, he shot 41% from 3 last year averaged 14 and a half points per game in a pretty limited role playing alongside Cooper Flagg and all the other amazing talent that Duke had this last year. Colin Knippel's the third best player in this draft. He's awesome. And whoever takes him, because he's probably going to go somewhere between 5th and 8th, whoever gets him, congratulations, because you got an absolute dude. Speaking of dudes, Trey Johnson. This dude's going to score 1,000,000 points. This guy puts the ball in the basket, I think, better than any other player in this draft class. Like his ability to just make tough shots, another bigger guard. He's just a hair under 6'5", can really shoot the basketball 40% from three this last year on 7 3-point attempts a game. That is extremely high efficiency on a lot of shots. By the way, his wingspan is 6 feet, 10 inches. That's pretty impressive. Averaged a tick under 20 points a game this last year at Texas. Right? This dude simply just puts the ball in the bucket. Got to work on the playmaking a little bit. But man, Trey Johnson's the best pure scorer in this draft class. Speaking of best, VJ Edgecombe, best athlete. And he is so athletic that his athleticism allows him to have an opportunity to potentially be the best, not the best, but to be like an all-star. Like he's just a freak athlete, 6'4", so another big guard. Doesn't shoot it great, only 34% from three this last year on about 4.5 attempts a game. Right, rebounds well. Very, like I said, very athletic. The issue is he doesn't finish super great at the rim, which is kind of concerning, but the athleticism is really hard not to like. Like that is why he's being drafted so high, because he is this just elite athlete. And as I said earlier, people, I think GMs want to take things that you can't coach, and he can't coach, a 40-inch vertical or whatever VJ Edgecombe is. It's really high. I do know that. So he's the best athlete in this draft, and he is so athletic that immediately gives him a chance in the NBA to be a really good player. Next guy that I want to talk about, Kasparas Yakushionis. I know I butchered his last name, but this dude, he's my second favorite player. Colin Knippel's my favorite. Kasparas is my second favorite player. Just because he's got such good feel. Like, the best version of him at Illinois was just like, wow. Like, he just leaps off the screen at you whenever he's playing his absolute best basketball. And his ability to just kind of read defenses. He's a good passer. Another really big guard. Just a hair under 6'5", 6'8" wingspan, a little over 200 pounds, right? Finishes well at the rim, but the passing is like, that is the thing that makes you go, whoa, right? His ability to anticipate where guys are cutting, the bounce passes, the interior passing is really good. Love Kasparas. He's got to work on the jumper a little bit. Probably got to work on some shot selection issues as well. Okay, but really good player who just knows and understands the game, and his passing, once again, is the best thing about him. So love Kasparas coming out of Illinois, another Big Ten guy. Speaking of Big Ten players, Danny Wolf to me is the most interesting player in the draft. He's a 7-foot point guard. That is essentially what he is. He'll probably go late lottery, maybe just outside of it. He's 6'10", probably 7 feet tall with, in shoes, decently long reach. Not a great shooter. So, if the team if the team takes Danny Wolf and they just throw him in a corner, he's probably not going to last very long. But if a team takes him and lets him legitimately play point guard for the second unit, then he's going to be a really interesting player. I'm thinking Hedo Turkoglu a little bit there. A big guy who can play point guard. So not a great shooter. Got to work on that a little bit. Turn the ball over a little bit too much at Michigan, but there is a lot to like there with the passing and the ball handling and the movement skills at that size. Like, when you watch him play, you don't think that he's 6'10". You don't. You're just like, wow, like that dude moves really well. It's like, wait, that dude's 7 feet tall. He's playing center right now. What in the world? So to me, he's the most intriguing prospect. Who drafts him is going to be really important because, like I said, if a team just wants to throw him in the corner, then he's probably not going to last. Cedric Howard's the best kept secret of this draft class. Love this dude. Probably one of the 10 best players in the draft, and that is not said very often about players that are 22 years old. Right? Started off at a Division III school, transferred up twice, finished, his career at Washington State. Big dude, 6'7" in shoes with a 7'2" wingspan, shot 40% from three on about five attempts a game, scored 17 and a half points a night on 70% true shooting. That's absurd, right? Not a great passer, but not a bad one either. The dude can just score, and he's big, man. 215, can post up, can shoot threes, can handle it a little bit. He just does a lot of things well, and he should because he's 22 years old, right? At a minimum, this is a guy who's going to show up, play really good defense, and knock down shots. That's pretty good value, if you ask me. So Cedric Howard is the best kept secret in the draft. When you hear his name called, probably in the lottery tonight, you're gonna be like, who? I'm like, oh wait, that's the guy that Jonathan was talking about today. Love that guy. Walter Clayton Jr. is the Jaime Jaquez Jr. of this draft class. Jaime Jaquez was drafted a couple of years ago by the Miami Heat, and he was just immediately good. Just immediately showed up and scored. He's fallen off a little bit because the jumper hasn't progressed how the Miami Heat have wanted it to. And Walter Clayton Jr., I think, is pretty similar in the idea that he's going to be good immediately. The ability to handle the basketball should transfer. Should translate. His ability to make tough shots should translate. His ability to shoot off the bounce, his quickness and his decision making, that should all transfer. I think Miami's going to take him with like the 20th pick. I think that's where they're picking, and he's going to impact that team in a positive way immediately. The final guy, and all of most of these takes have been, relatively positive. This last one's not. Jeremiah Fears is this year's John Morant, and he's not as athletic as John Morant, but he's just a very quick and explosive player. He's a guy who's potentially going to go in the top 10. I wouldn't take him in the top 10 because he's a smaller guard, only 6'2". The wingspan's not great, only 6'5". He can't shoot 28% from three, but he is incredibly quick. His ability to get to the rim is incredible. Like if you watched Oklahoma play at all this year, like that dude just jumps off the screen with the quickness and just his ability to get to the rim, and the way that he finishes at the rim at that size is really impressive. But once again, he's only 6'2". He's only 180 pounds, and he only shot 28% from three. Small guards who can't shoot do not last in the NBA, and that is exactly what Jeremiah Fears is. I wouldn't take him. When we come back here in about 4.5 minutes, Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, he's going to join the show, and we're going to talk about this upcoming NBA draft tonight. And after the interview, I'm going to give away tickets to Holiday World 317-228-1430 when that time comes after the Zach Pereles interview, who joins me when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, X, or the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Today's show is sponsored by the one and only Holiday World. We're giving away tickets after this interview with Zach Pereles. Now through August 3rd, you can catch Holiday World's In the Sky drone show and fireworks spectacular. Trust me, you want those tickets, and we're going to give them away coming up here in about 20-ish minutes or so. Join now by the one and only Zach Pereles to talk a little bit about the NBA draft going on tonight. Zach, what's going on, man? How are you? Say that one more time, Zach. I don't think we heard you.
I'm good.
There
I'm
it is.
doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing better now. I can hear you. That's very important. The draft tonight, I'm very excited about it. Why the draft is 2 days, Zach? I have no idea. I think it's dumb. But I do want to start with the second round. Pacers do have the 54th pick in this year's draft. Who are some guys that you think could be available at that point for the Pacers to take?
Yeah. If you're the Pacers, I think that this is not just a throwaway draft. I think that this is a area where, like, you have had two really good seasons, and obviously the Tyrese Halliburton injury changes things, but you're still looking for a guy who I think can be a guy who steps in and contributes. Obviously, maybe if you're looking at a point guard there, I loved Mark Sears at Alabama. He's kind of a guy who's maybe looking at that end of the second round. Maybe a guy who's a little bit more ready than some of the guys in that area. Obviously, he played at a really fast tempo. He likes to run, which the Pacers do. He can really shoot it. I feel like he could develop into like a steady kind of second point guard. He's obviously not a great defender, but the Pacers have some really good backcourt defenders. So I like the idea of Mark Sears there. Especially because there are going to be some minutes at point guard. And he just kind of projects as kind of a more ready guy than maybe some other guys in that area. You also have Kobe Bryant from Kentucky, a guy who can really shoot it. So those are two guys that just kind of immediately stood out to me. I think we've also talked about maybe, regardless of what happens with Miles Turner, you'd like to see a little bit more of a center presence behind him. Cliff Omoruyi, that's another Alabama guy who likes to play fast, so you're sensing a theme there. He's very different from Miles Turner. He is a pick and roll at the rim lob threat guy, which Indiana certainly doesn't have. And I don't, after they went to Game 7 of the finals, I don't know if they need one, but it would certainly provide a little bit of a different look. At that spot, you're just looking for something, whether it's long-term projection, a guy you draft and stash, or a guy who maybe can sneak in a few minutes here somewhat early in his career. So if you're looking at kind of that latter suggestion, I think those two Alabama guys could fit the bill.
That's pretty similar to what I have written down. Not those players, but those kinds of players, joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the NBA draft tonight. The center that I have written down, he plays in Italy. He's from Senegal. We won't talk about him much. But the guard that I have written down is Caleb Love out of Arizona. What are your thoughts on him coming into this draft?
Oh, man, Caleb Love is just a mercurial player. You don't always love the shot selection, but hey, when they're going in, they're going in. He's certainly super talented, and he has had some really good runs at Arizona after really a kind of unprecedentedly up and down career at North Carolina, a guy who was a hero of a team that was on the doorstep of a championship and then basically run out of town. So I don't know if he's my favorite guy, but again, like at this point, you're taking swings on guys, and Caleb Love certainly has the talent and just the scoring potential to be a guy who, if he finds the right role, could be a good fit.
Okay, I like it. That's because my thing for the Pacers this year, when you look at them potentially adding a guard, once again joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking a little bit of hoops and the NBA draft tonight. When it comes to the Pacers adding a guard this year, like you obviously want them to be able to play with Tyrese Halliburton in 2 years. And my thought process with Caleb Love, or I think Mark Sears would fit this really well too, is TJ McConnell is going to be like 35 in 2 years. So like, who's a guy who can play some minutes this year and then provide like a little bit of a scoring burst off the bench as TJ McConnell gets a bit older? I think both Sears and Love could both do that really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. The Pacers are in a really enviable position. And remember, like, if things don't go great this coming year, and there's no reason for us to believe they'll completely bottom out, but without Tyrese Halliburton, there's a chance that they do take a step back. They got their pick back in 2026, and they've, if there's one teeny tiny silver lining, and I don't even want to call it that, but it is just a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, it is. And I talked about it a little bit yesterday with a Pacers writer here. And he was like, I think the Pacers are too good to tank, but like they may look up and be 500 and be like, yeah, I mean, we can sit Siakam for the rest of the year. And then the next thing you know, you're the Mavericks and you're supposed to have the 13th pick. And then you end up with the number 1 overall pick, which that would be crazy. I hope that happens. But anyway, speaking of the number 1 overall pick, Cooper Flagg, I love him. I don't think he wins Rookie of the Year, though, because he's going to play for a really good team, and I just don't think he's going to get as many shots as these other guys. I would bet Con Knippel to win Rookie of the Year right now if he gets drafted by the Jazz. What do you think of Con Knippel and kind of the third best player on down in the draft? Because I think it's pretty clear that Flagg's going to go 1, Dylan Harper is going to go number 2, and then everything after that, I feel like there's some questions.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting class when you look at this is such a top-heavy young class. Like the top 7 guys on CBS Sports' board are all fresh. Top 9, 10, 11 guys on CBS Sports. It wasn't loading initially. 11 guys on CBS Sports' big board are all freshmen. So I do think that Con Knippel could be a great call there. It all really does depend on the fit. I will say that I think Cooper Flagg, he's been so good for so long that all of a sudden he doesn't play basketball for a few months, and you get all these kind of naysayers. This guy was supposed to be entering college this year. Instead, he was the best player in college basketball last year. And I do think, like, with no Kyrie Irving, I think Cooper Flagg could still put up decent numbers. And I think the Mavericks could still be pretty good, which is why I would probably still lean him for Rookie of the Year. But, like, Knippel's certainly not a bad bet. Heck, if you believe in the talent with Ace Bailey, he could just score a ton of points on a ton of shots, and it ends up being kind of a convoluted year. But I think I'd still lean Flagg just because he impacts winning so many ways. And if you get this kind of weird, convoluted, these guys have maybe better scoring numbers, but they're on bad teams. Like, I think Cooper Flagg could come in and he will be like a high impact guy. Maybe his numbers don't quite reflect that, but he is still going to put up significant numbers. And if the Mavericks are decent and he makes them even like a good team, a playoff team, maybe you just stick with the guy who was the best player, even if he doesn't have the best scoring numbers.
Dylan Harper Jr. could do the exact same thing in San Antonio. It's so weird because the guys that are going to get drafted 1 and 2 are going to go to like legitimately good teams, which is not normal at all. So I'm really intrigued to see what both of those guys look like. Who is your favorite player in the draft? Like not necessarily, the best player, but just the guy that you just really enjoyed watching this year. And you're like, I can't wait to see that guy in the NBA.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think that I would stick with Cooper Flagg. Like, every maybe small criticism you can have of him, he proved it wrong. There were games where he went crazy from 3. There were games where he scored off the bounce. There were games where you just felt his impact in every single sense on both ends of the floor. He was really like a really fun player to watch. I think people maybe get caught up too much in like he's super competitive and he works super hard and he's a great defender. All of those things are true, but it's almost like that even took away from some of the individually brilliant offensive games. So I think he was my favorite player to watch night in, night out. Just like an absolute force offensively. You look at this Duke team, like they lost a few games with late meltdowns, and that was pretty much it. And yes, Cooper Flagg was at the center of those meltdowns, but it's like we forgot what he did the first 38 minutes of every game, and those few failures maybe stick out a little bit more. What he did this year was really, really special, and it's almost forgotten because of the NCAA tournament letdown. He was my favorite guy to watch. He's my favorite guy in the draft. And again, the fact that he did it when he was supposed to be a high school senior is just remarkable.
Yeah, he's going to be the youngest player drafted since LeBron James, which is pretty insane. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the NBA draft tonight. Let's go to the opposite end. Who's a guy that everyone seems to like, but you don't?
Sure. So a top 10 guy by pretty much every single board that I've seen anywhere is Kasparis Jakusionis. He's a guy who played professionally overseas, came to Illinois, and there are flashes when he is at his best, and you're like, this guy controls the game. He passes, he hits tough threes. But then when you look at the overall numbers, a lot of turnovers, like the turnover to assist ratio was not good. I love that he's a big guard, but he's not super explosive. He's not a super duper athlete. So I wonder if he doesn't have quite the ceiling, maybe. He's obviously like all of these guys in the top 10, you draft off of, the flashes that you see. And I really think that Jakusionis had some really, really impressive games, but I just don't know if his game translates well enough, especially with like the huge number of turnovers and the athleticism, not issues, but maybe just it's not quite at the height that some of the other guys in the top 10 are. So I think I'm a little bit more scared about his ceiling as maybe not being quite as high as some of the other guys in the top 10.
I really like him. He's probably my favorite player in the draft to just watch, and the guy that I'm most excited to see is undoubtedly Knippel, because I think that he didn't have the ball a ton, and I feel like he can do a lot with the ball in his hands. I feel like we saw that during the ACC tournament, and just his ability to kind of fit wherever. The second guy I'm most intrigued by is Kasparis coming out of Illinois, because of, like you said, all the flashes and the passing. I get that the 2.5 turnovers per game isn't great. The 33% from three isn't great. But I think if he can just clean up those two things, like, is he going to be the best player on a team good enough to win a title? Probably not. But could he be like the second or third best? I think so, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the beauty of the NBA draft is like these guys are so young. And there's so much projection. Like, if your projection comes true, I wouldn't be stunned. I just don't think he's quite like the fit in the modern NBA. It's almost like he's one of these more like crafty scorers rather than like really dominant, like 3-point and get to the rim guys. So, but 100%, like he could develop a game. His shooting could get better. Illinois asked a ton of him last year. Maybe he is used, in a little bit less meaningful, not less meaningful, but less of like a ball dominant role, because one of the biggest differences in the NBA is like in the NBA, you can have point forwards and you can have centers who run your offense and all these different guys. Whereas college, it's like you have like one or two guys who can handle the ball. And obviously Kasparis was asked a lot of for that. And so there's the beauty of the NBA draft. He's a guy who I'm not so high on because maybe I don't love his ceiling, but he could absolutely, as you said, be a really, really good supporting cast on a good team, supporting player on a good team.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the NBA draft tonight. A lot of the top prospects So I have the CBS Sports big board pulled up, Zach, and there's two things about it that I do not like. Jeremiah Fears as the 11th best player in the draft, I think is a little high. What are your thoughts on Jeremiah Fears? I know that's not your big board. You just referenced it earlier, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Jeremiah Fears is such a tough one as well. I think that the biggest thing with him is if a team believes in him as much as he believes in himself, he's going to go top 10. And I love how much he believes in himself. He was kind of a guy who maybe some people thought he could go back and honestly like have an absurd second year because he is super duper skilled. But you're right. Like it wasn't always consistent. He was not on a very good team either. I didn't think. He's one of those guys who it almost feels like could go one way or the other of, you know, he is fun to watch. He is fast. He is explosive. Or it could just not really ever all come together. He's not a super big guy. So, you know, 11 is certainly one of these things where if you're a believer, he could be 7 or 8. And if you're not, he could be closer down to 20. He does have the one thing that I love the most is that he will not be short on confidence if he has bumps early in his NBA career. It certainly, you know, he certainly wasn't short on confidence at Oklahoma during a pretty uneven season there. So he's a guy who I really think needs to be drafted to a spot where they have a veteran point guard or, you know, just veteran presences in the building that can make him better. He was at one point being mentioned with the Wizards, which I really like because they have Marcus Smart and now they have CJ McCollum there. So again, I think I haven't done my own big board. I think that 11 is probably, I think that's the upper end for where I would put him. But if you believe in him, I don't have too many qualms with it. I really, really want to see him go to a landing spot where he has a couple veteran mentors who can help him capitalize on all that confidence.
He's a lot of fun to watch. Very explosive, like you said, super quick, got by everyone when he was playing at Oklahoma last year. I just don't like that, like you said, he's smaller because I don't think small guards in the NBA always translate to winning playoff games. And I don't like that he only shot 28% from three. I think small guards who can't shoot, like that's just not a good combination. But, you know, usually guys, jumpers improve. But, like, I think if you're 6'2", like, you got to shoot it at around 38% from three. Like, does it improve that much? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, he might always be, you know, he might always top out as like explosive scorer off your bench, who can maybe run the show for a little bit, can maybe play a little bit off guard, but then the size questions get in there. So I definitely understand on sides.
The other thing about the CBS big board that I'm really trying to understand, I love Cedric Howard coming out of Washington State. That dude, or excuse me, not Howard, Coward, my bad. I love his game. Like, started at Division III, transfers up, was just awesome. I thought in like every area last year. The playmaking's not great, but like he rebounds, he guards, shot 40% from three. He's got a post game. I love that dude. Like, to a point where I would argue he probably won't go top 10 because he's 20, he's almost 22, but I think he's one of the 10 best players in this draft.
Yeah, I don't think that you're too far off there. I love guys who continuously improve, and Cedric Coward is a guy who did that. I mean, the guy was going to go to Duke until it turned out that he was too good to skip out on the NBA draft. So you're right. I don't think he's jumping into that top 10, but could he make a good team really happy at 12 or 14? I think that there's a good chance there. Again, like, you look at the size, it's good but not great for a wing, so maybe he slots into that shooting guard role. And then, you know, you have a little bit more questions with his passing and on the ball. But again, like, a good team will find a way to take advantages of his strengths. You know, I opened up his profile on the big board, and the mock draft has him going to Oklahoma City, which It's just so
Please
funny.
no.
Like Oklahoma City still has these picks, and they could get these super talented guys who like can be like a potential championship contributor in 12 months from now.
Yeah, I hope not. Please, anywhere but there. Please, anywhere but. And not even just because it'll make the Thunder better, mainly because like I don't think he's going to get to play very much because they're so good. I want to see him go. I like you said, like a team like the Hawks. If he ended up there, I think that'd be a really good place for him. But we'll see what ends up happening. Last thing that I want to touch on here. So I think that when you look at any draft, NFL, NBA, whatever, like there are certain things that you feel are like absolutely going to happen. Once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the NBA draft tonight. And I think there's some really obvious ones. It's like, okay, there's a 99% chance that Cooper Flagg shows up and is very impactful early on both ends of the floor. Dylan Harper Jr. is going to score and be really good on the Spurs. But I think something that I think is absolute, if Trey Johnson ends up being like the best scorer, maybe not the best player all around, but if he's the best scorer coming out of this draft class, I would not be surprised in the slightest. What are your thoughts on Trey Johnson? And is there something else like that where you feel like this player is absolutely going to do this? Because when I look at Trey Johnson, I'm like, that guy's absolutely going to score.
Sure. I like Trey Johnson a lot. He feels very safe in kind of that third tier, which if you put Cooper Flagg in his own tier, Dylan Harper in his own tier, and then maybe, that 3 to 6 range, I think that Trey Johnson is super safe because at the very worst, he is an absolute flamethrower of a shooter. And so I really like that pick. I would love to see his ball handling get a little bit tighter. There were times where teams could get physical with him, and it just wasn't quite as smooth. But he is a guy who, like, I could see making a big jump. I didn't always love how Texas used him last year and just Texas's team in general. But gosh, when he got going, he was as impressive on the offensive end as anyone. You're hoping for him, like, he gains 10, 20 pounds of muscle and really tightens up that handle. And in 2 years, he is really just like a smooth scorer from all over the court. Just a guy who will probably always be like a catch and shoot first or pull up shooter first. But if he can add just a little bit of that, put it on the ground and get to the basket game, I think that he could really be a special scorer, as you mentioned. If I had to give you one, like, superlative almost, how about I really like Kamen Maluach out of Duke. He's a guy who, like, is a vertical threat. He's a good defender. He started basketball late and is going to continue to improve. I think a team will really, really appreciate having him as like a modern center who does all these things, will continue to improve. Has, by all accounts, earned rave reviews from everyone at Duke. He finishes well. He is not going to be a guy who steps in and is terrific immediately, I don't think, but he's going to step in and be a guy who contributes to modern NBA basketball because of his length, because of his athleticism, because of the things that he does. I think he's going to be like a better pro maybe than some people think, because it almost reminds me a little bit of Derek Lively a couple years ago out of Duke. Like, this guy runs really well, can defend the rim, and can hammer home dunks at the rim. That is if you're not a shooter, that is a modern NBA center for you. And I think that could be his path immediately. And I think he does even have maybe a little bit of a higher upside than Derek Lively because there's still so much untapped potential. So biggest, I don't even know what the superlative is there. Maybe just most exciting unknown goes to Kamen Maluach.
I just wish he rebounded better. That's the one thing about him where I'm like, you're that big,
Yep.
and like you got one rebound at halftime against Houston that doesn't play a guy taller than 6'8". Like, come on. That's the one thing about him where I'm just like, eh. But everything else you said, I think is right. I think he's really switchable too. Like, the number of times that he'd be defending the screener and Duke would switch and a guard would be like, oh, this guy's 7'3". I'm just going to blow by this guy. And then Malawach is like, no, you're not. Was pretty crazy. Last thing, is there any player you feel very strongly about one way or the other that should be drafted pretty high tonight that we haven't discussed yet?
Oh, man. One player I feel really highly about. How about let's go with this one. I think that Nick Clifford is a really good player who is going to be a really good player for a long time. The NBA, like, you're obviously I'll bring it up one last time. Like, you are not shooting blindly, but you are, putting a lot into projections and how will this guy's body develop and how will this guy's game develop. Nick Clifford, to me, feels like a really good player for a really long time, defends really, really well. He showed it on the biggest stage of the NCAA tournament. He is like an outstanding, just all-around player. I really enjoy watching him play. He's smooth. He does everything you want out of a wing. Is the handle there? No, but like when you're building a roster, you want players like Nick Clifford on your wings. He's a guy who has improved a ton. We talk about improvement a lot. I really like that. I just think that he is a really stellar player who will help a good team immediately and be good for a long time. So if you're a team who's maybe looking for a good player, like this guy could start for us and start 70 games on a good team in 2 or 3 years, I think that Nick Clifford should maybe be considered a top dozen player. I love the improvement, and maybe I'm leaning too much into the college stuff. And I watch a ton of college basketball, so I will always favor the guys maybe a little bit more who have proven it, maybe more than the projects. But I really think Nick Clifford is a good, high-quality player, smart player, is going to continue to improve. So I think he should go higher than maybe he will tonight. But wherever he lands, I think he's going to be a very dependable player for a long time.
I agree. And I really like what you said about how, like, every player that you have doesn't have to be able to handle the basketball. Like, most guys handle the ball a lot in college, and then they get to the NBA and they don't handle the basketball anymore. They catch and shoot, they catch and go, and they play defense. Like, that is a really normal thing. And so I'm really glad that you said that. I like Nick Clifford as well. I picked Colorado State to win multiple games in the NCAA tournament because of him. So I'm with you in that entirely. Zach, thank you for your time, man. You were great as always.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was always a blast.
Zach Pereles, you can read all his stuff over at CBSSports.com. He's got a newsletter that came out today where he covers the NBA draft and he kind of runs through a lot of the stuff that we just talked about. Go read it. He does an excellent job covering everything in that newsletter. Pull your phone out, 317-228-1430. The Real Jonathan Smith Show, sponsored by Holiday World today, and we are giving away Holiday World tickets in this break. Once again, 317-228-1430 for tickets to Holiday World and Splash and Safari. They've got an awesome sky drone show and fireworks show going on right now. You got to go see it. It's an absolute blast. 317-228-1430 for your chance to win some Holiday World tickets. The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. We'll be right back with who the Pacers could take with that 54th overall pick. 317-228-1430 for your chance to win tickets to Holiday World.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. You can head over there and subscribe. Maybe watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith to follow and watch the show there. Or maybe you're listening on that Indy Sports Ticket app, no matter how you're listening. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. Giving away more tickets to Holiday World tomorrow, so make sure you are tuned in for that. We're also going to talk a little bit more Pacers draft tomorrow. I've given you three prospects today. I'll probably give you 3 more tomorrow, because why not? The possibilities are endless with that 54th pick, aside from, whoever gets taken in front of that pick. And I love this time of the year, the NBA draft, just looking at different players, and you watch all this college basketball to kind of figure out, who's going to be good, who's not going to be good. Or this is why I watch college basketball. Like some people watch it for, the pageantry and the rivalries, and some people for some reason watch it for how they play the game. I don't really get that one, but hey, whatever you like, you like what you like, and that's cool. I watch it to know who's going to be drafted and who's going to be a legitimately good NBA player. And, draft comps come out every year. This is the best one I think I've ever heard. Here's Kendrick Perkins this morning talking about Cooper Flagg.
But look, this is how I look at Cooper Flagg. If LeBron James and Kevin Garnett had a baby, you get Cooper Flagg. And why I say that is because when you think about it,
what a comp. I just, if LeBron James and Kevin Garnett had a baby, you would get Cooper Flagg. What in the world, man? Kendrick Perkins. Oh my gosh. That cracks me up. Every time I hear it, I just laugh. Because that's what you get. And you scroll through some of these big boards and they'll have draft comps on there and all this kind of stuff. And you get all the way down, to let's look, Kobe Sanders out of Nevada, right? Senior, small forward, all this kind of stuff. He's, let me pull up his stuff here. Averaged 16 points a game, shot 46% from the field, 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists. So a guy who can do, just a little bit of everything, just like a little bit of everything. Right. And, if you read through comps on him, it's probably bigger Kobe Bryant or whatever it is, and it's just, I find it funny. I really do. Yeah, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to tell you what guys do well, what they don't do well, what they need to improve on, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the biggest thing to remember is how players change. I saw this video yesterday. Cam Johnson, he's a wing for the Brooklyn Nets. He does this podcast thing, and he was talking about TJ McConnell and the player that he was in high school, because Cam Johnson and TJ McConnell are from the same town. And in high school, TJ McConnell, the little short dude who runs around for the Pacers and, gets 7 feet from the bucket and scores pretty much every time he gets that close to the bucket. He was a 3-point shooter in high school. That's what he was. And he goes to Duquesne and he shoots 40% from 3 at Duquesne. And then he goes, then he transfers to Arizona, where he continues just to be an absolute bucket. And now he barely takes threes anymore. And so to me, that is one of the coolest things about watching guys transition from college basketball to the NBA. Their games are going to change so much, especially the players who have the ball a lot that played, 4 years of college hoops, because you get to the NBA and all of a sudden it's hey man, you're good with the ball in your hands, but we're going to let Tyrese Halliburton run the offense, or hey, Dalton Connect. You were pretty good with the ball in your hands last year at Tennessee. By the way, you're never going to have the ball in your hands again, because we're going to give the ball to LeBron James and Luka Doncic time and time again. So you better guard and you better make threes, because if you don't, then you're not going to play. And so seeing the transition of how guys play in college to how they're forced to play when they get to the NBA, if they want to see the floor, it is one of the more fascinating things in sports, right? Because like if you play wide receiver in college football, and then you play wide receiver in the NFL, like the routes are a little bit different, but ultimately, like your job stays the same. Your job is to get open and to catch the football. Now, your number of targets may change. Like that's probably pretty normal, but like the essence of what you're going to do stays the same. Same thing for quarterback and offensive line and defensive line and all those other areas. But like going from college basketball to the NBA, like the sports are so vastly different. You know, Zach Pereles, I thought, made a really good point about how like in college basketball, like you don't have point forwards. Every team has like two guys who can bring the ball up the floor, and they both play guard. In the NBA, everyone can bring the ball up the floor, or almost everyone is capable of bringing the ball up the floor. So it's different. And seeing how these guys have to change and critique their game to fit the NBA, which is completely and totally different from college basketball. It's one of the more fascinating things, I think, about the NBA draft. Because it's not just what are you good at doing right now? It's what could you be good at doing in 3 years? And yeah, you have the ball a lot right now, but you're not going to have it a lot when you get to the NBA. Are you capable of playing without the ball? Do you know how to cut? Do you know how to screen? And then sometimes like you'll come off screens to a screen. Like do you understand? That's part of why I really like Con Knipple, because he's a guy who just understands how to fill so many different roles. And that to me is the toughest thing for a lot of these guys going from college to the NBA. You have the ball less, and you got to figure out how to be impactful without the basketball. And that is not always the easiest thing to do, because all these guys that are getting drafted tonight, most of them have been the best player wherever they've played for the longest time. So can't wait for the draft tonight, and I can't wait to see how all these guys adjust. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to throw out a couple names that the Pacers could take with that 54th overall pick when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith to follow me and watch the show there. You can also listen via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Now, DeWanna Bonner, I think that's how you say it, has officially been released by the Indiana Fever, which is not a surprise if you heard me talk to Tony East yesterday. The fit just didn't really work out. That's what she said. She released a statement because this was announced 5 minutes ago, so I guess this is breaking news. DeWanna Bonner came out and said, I want to sincerely thank the Indiana Fever for the opportunity to be part of the Fever franchise. Despite our shared goals and excitement heading into the season, I felt the fit didn't work out, and I appreciate the organization's willingness to grant my request to move on, particularly at this point in my career. She later continued, I wish the Fever great success as they continue to build around this dynamic group of young players. Yeah, this isn't really that big of a deal. You know, I don't care. I don't think you should care. Let's be honest. You're not watching Fever games to watch, DeWanna Bonner play either. You're not. I get it. She's third all time in scoring in the history of the WNBA. That's really cool. She'll be fourth at some point when Caitlin Clark passes her. She only played 9 games this year for the Fever, and she wasn't very good. She played about 21 minutes a night, averaged 7 points, 4 rebounds as a center, 1.5 assists, 1 steal, and 0.1 blocks as a center. That's not very good. And about 1 turnover a game. She only shot, 34.5% from the floor. I'm not convinced that you're losing very much with her leaving, especially since most of her games she wasn't very good in. Listen to these game logs. 7 points in the season opener in 27 minutes. 0 points, a goose egg. In the second game of the season, she played 16 minutes. 1 point in 19 minutes against Atlanta in the Fever's third game of the year. 2 points in 23 minutes when they played the Liberty. And then she had 2 good games in a row. 21 points in 25 minutes against Washington. They lost that game, by the way. 13 points in 22 minutes against the Connecticut Sun. They lost that game as well. And then after that, it's just been right back to not very good. 9 points in 21 minutes against Washington, 6 points in 19 minutes against Chicago, and then 5 points in 20 minutes against Atlanta. She's like that 7 points per game is so misleading. She's had 2 games where she consistently scored the basketball, and that's really it. They're not losing anything with her. And if you've watched the Fever play this year, then you know why she's leaving. You know why she hasn't played very well. She's an older player, been in the league for 15 years. The Fever want to get out and run. They want to push the pace. They want to get the ball out in transition, run and gun, shoot threes, cut to the rim. Caitlin Clark's, whirling around, finding people cutting to the rim. It's cool. That's not the kind of player that DeWanna Bonner is. It's just not. She wants, slow pace, slow the game down, set the offense up, give her the ball on the block. And why would they give her the ball on the block when they have Aaliyah Boston? Why? So this is not a big deal. I don't know what Fever fans are saying about it. I don't really care what they're saying about it. It's not the end of the world that, DeWanna Bonner is gone. Simple as that. So in the NBA draft, it's happening tonight. Cooper Flagg will be drafted by the Dallas Mavericks with the number 1 overall pick. And the Dallas Mavericks will, probably find some way to mess it up. As long as Nico Harrison is the general manager of that operation, and as long as Patrick Dumont is the governor of operations, they will find a way to mess it up. The Pacers do not have a pick tonight. With that being said, they could trade into the first round if they wanted to. Brian Windhorst yesterday saying that the Pacers are a team to keep an eye on this summer. Maybe they move, an Obi Toppin or a TJ McConnell or something like that for, a late first tonight. Something like that. We'll see. So as of right now, though, the Pacers do not have a pick, And I know who I want them to take with that 54th overall pick tomorrow night, because the NBA draft is 2 days long now, which is the dumbest thing ever. Mohamed Faye. That's the guy that I have settled on. Center from Senegal, currently a 20-year-old pro playing in Italy. Big dude, 6'11", 7'4" wingspan, agile, moves pretty well for his size, very raw prospect. Defensively, very versatile. Like, he's kind of switchable. You know, he at the rim because of his size. And like I said, his mobility allows him to like recover. Plays with a lot of energy. He's got a high motor. Sounds like a Pacer already. The guy can rebound. That's really why I like this dude. I've talked a lot about how the Pacers need not to get rid of Miles Turner, but they do need a different look at center, mainly when they play against other teams that go big and want to rebound and do those things. Like, Miles Turner has the skill set to play the 4. Like, if the Pacers wanted to go like jumbo package, you know, they could go like Halliburton, Nembhard, Siakam at the 3, Turner at the 4, and then potentially this Mohamed Faye guy at the 5, because like there's enough shooting on the floor for them to do that, you know, and like that would allow them to rebound the basketball a little bit better as well. Mohamed Faye, a guy who can go up on the glass and go get it. Like I said, pretty decent athlete, so he can, you know, catch lobs, dunk the basketball, right? Finishes decently well around the rim. That being said, he can't shoot, but he knows who he is, which I think is a very underrated thing. Mohamed Faye hasn't taken a 3 all year over in Italy in his pro league. I think that's awesome. It's important to know who you are as a player, and it seems like he knows that he is best served setting screens and rolling to the rim and finishing around the rim. Okay, now he doesn't have very many moves around the rim. Like, he's not drop stepping. He's not throwing up any sort of like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar skyhook. He's not doing that, but he doesn't have to. He's gonna be like a backup center. I don't need that from my backup center. I need you to run. I need you to run. I need you to rebound. And when you get the ball around the bucket, I need you to put it in the bucket. That's simple. In order to do that, he's got to work on his left hand a bit. It's not great. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But he sounds like a center from the very few clips I've seen from, you know, the 5 or 6 scouting reports that I've read about him. He sounds like a backup center that can give you a different look than Miles Turner does without sacrificing rim protection. You know, like, he's going to rebound, he's going to run the floor, he's going to set screens, and most importantly, he's going to protect the rim. Okay, like, I think that was the biggest issue with Tony Bradley and Thomas Bryant in the playoffs. Like, when Miles Turner went out of the game, it was open season on getting to the bucket and finishing around the rim, because Tony Bradley and Thomas Bryant aren't great at protecting the rim. So whoever the Pacers go get, you know, with that 54th pick, I just hope it's someone who gives them a slightly different look at center while also still having the ability to protect the rim. Okay, that's what I want. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll see. Can't wait to see, you know, what all this looks like. So that's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. We have the NBA draft going on tonight. I'll have thoughts on how that goes tomorrow. You know, some team is going to mess up. It is a very interesting draft because I think the first 2 picks are pretty much set in stone. It's going to be Cooper Flagg, and then it's going to be Dylan Harper Jr., 2 really good players going to 2 really good teams. So going to be interesting to see how both of those guys kind of translate to the NBA. But from the Philly pick on down, a lot of questions. Seems like VJ Edgecombe is probably going to end up in Philly, but that hasn't been confirmed either. So we'll see what they decide to do. You know, Trey Johnson and Ace Bailey and my guy, Knipple, you know, they kind of seem to be in the mix for like 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe Jeremiah Fears goes 8. Like, there's just a lot of questions on who's going to go and what seems to be a pretty good draft class this season. So we'll see how it goes. The NBA draft is tonight. Can't wait to hear all the insane player comps, like, you know, Kendrick Perkins saying that Cooper Flagg is if Kevin Garnett and LeBron James had a baby. The most insane thing I've ever heard anybody ever say. So the NBA draft is tonight. I'll have more on it tomorrow when the Real Jonathan Smith Show starts at 10 a.m. Fran Fraschilla gets us started at noon on the Dan Dockett Show. So stay tuned in. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.